Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Banjo-Kazooie. In the last part, we explored and finished up all of Clanker's Cavern, and now it's time for us to go once again exploring about Grunty's lair, finding the puzzle for the fourth world, and then finally accessing it. So the first thing you want to do upon leaving Clanker's Cavern is go to the left from where the camera starts at least, and hit another switch with the beak bomb, in order to raise this platform so we can get up here, because there's two things we want up here. First off, there's another set of Brentilda hints for later on.
Grunty wears a reinforced girdle under that repulsive dress of hers. She's also got this nasty pet dog whose name is Ripper.
I mean, hey, that sounds kind of cool, honestly.
My sister sings in her own band, Grunty and the Broomstick Boys. They're awful. Why do I talk all the time? It's really hard to make theirs rhyme.
That explains something about Banjo-Tooie a little too well. But the other thing we want to do is come over here and ground pound onto this switch to raise the grate in the water. This underwater passage will directly lead us to the puzzle for the fourth world, which is what I was talking about earlier in the LP, where they kind of get a little bit playful with where they'll place the puzzles relative to the world. Because sometimes, like with Mumbo's Mountain, it'll be almost right next to it. Other times, it can be on the exact opposite side of the layer from where the world in question actually is. Due to this, even if you maybe haven't found a switch to activate something yet, or the like, it's a very good idea, like with the levels, to explore any room of Grunty's lair as fully as you can before maybe leaving it, just to see if you can find any other routes, any little secret areas that can potentially lead to worlds, or the puzzles and the like. It can really feed back into itself in a really satisfying way, honestly. I really do like Grunty's lair on the whole. With that, we've now opened up World 4 Bubblegloop Swamp. We just need to find where the actual entrance for it is, which can be kind of one of the fun things about Gruntilda's lair as well. Because a lot of hub world adjacent things like Peach's Castle and all that, they're usually more just a glorified level select with some secrets along the way. Gruntilda's lair is one of the few hub worlds I think I've ever accessed in a game where it feels like a level in and of itself rather than a way to convey you between levels. Helping that is I think it has the most musical variations out of any song in the game, because whenever you're near a painting for a level in question, they'll usually play a version of Gruntilda's lair's theme using instruments from the level in question, which will then play again when you get close to the actual location of the world. Either way, at this point we've backtracked back to the room where the puzzles for both Treasure Trove Cove and Clanker's Cavern were, as the witch switch back in Clanker's Cavern raised the eyes of this Gruntilda platform. Beak bombing them down gets you the fourth Gruntilda's lair, Jiggy. From here, since we already have the first three worlds done, we're now just going to finally move past the note door that we've been seeing in this room since like 2 or 3 parts back at this point, really. This door needed 180 notes, we have 300, we had more than enough for it. In fact, we already technically have enough for the next note door as well. And we're not too far away from the total you need for the fourth note door on top of that. Again, you do not need every note in the game to reach the end game. You at most need, I think, 90 out of every 100 to reach the final boss.
My lazy sister often sleeps on a pile of treasure. The dirty hag.
I mean, that sounds pretty nice, honestly, albeit uncomfortable.
The only thing she's ever won was the biggest butt competition at witch school.
I mean, I'd say that make her pretty popular online nowadays.
She often boasts of appearing on the cover of Fat Hag Monthly, sitting on her broomstick.
I mean, if it's potentially witch-focused, that's a pretty standard pose, I'd say. The randomly generated options that Brentilda can say about Grunty, some of them are just genuinely disgusting no matter what, but some of them definitely come across as dated 90s humor, specifically about jokes about weight and the like, which is kinda hard to get around, just in general, when it's a game from the late 90s.
Hey, keep your feet out. You can't use us until you've spoken to Bottles.
Okay, fine, damn. Speaking of Brentilda, though, we're already directly next to her next location, just over here in this log in the wall.
My fat old sister's favorite sport is loogie flicking.
Ew.
Although she's dim, she attended Fat Hag High.
Alright.
You won't believe that Gruntilda's party trick is performing a scary striptease.
You know, I could make a comment about how horrifying the mental image of her specifically doing a striptease is. But in my head, I'd rather be a fly on the wall to witness the facial reaction of any parent whose child asks them what a striptease is after they first read that when they were like 6. I think that's a much funnier mental image. With that said, welcome to Bubblegloop Swamp, and our first duty is actually to go directly behind the spawn point to find the new move for this world, because it's the first thing we really want to grab here. These are the wading boots. Chicken Legs wears them so you can safely wade through dangerous areas like the swamp for a limited time. Okay, Chicken. Kazooie, let's go grab a pair. Great, now I know all the swamp's new moves. And the first thing I want to do with that is actually immediately leave the level. Because in order for things to go a bit smoothly at the end of the world, I need to go grab the pair of wading boots we saw in the log over to our right at the moment, and use it to wade through this swamp water here. I didn't mention it on our way over, but if you stand in this water, you take damage over time. And there is knockback included with it. I think you can theoretically make it to your destination alive, especially if you had every honeycomb piece up to this point, including maybe even the ones from Bubblegloop Swamp. But yeah, I don't think you'd be able to make the trip back alive, honestly. There's a couple of reasons I'm going in this direction now instead of going to explore Bubblegloop Swamp properly, but largely it's to open up a pathway I will not be able to open up during the time I want to be over here after the world. But that said, there's a couple of other things to find over here, like already the puzzle for the next world after Bubblegloop, which, especially since I already have the wading boots, you really could actively skip Bubblegloop Swamp technically and head straight to there. My main reason for being over here at the moment is to break that ice block right there in front of that log. With that said, we can't enter the log yet because the entrance is too small. We need to use the transformation from Bubblegloop in order to actually access it. With that said, the transformation from Bubblegloop can't break the ice block, so no matter what, you need to do this in 2 trips. But while I'm here, I might as well open up the next door already. Freeze Easy Peak's door is now open. So whenever we find that in Gruntilda's lair, we can just immediately access it. With both of my duties over here done for now, though, I believe once I grab the wading boots on top of this log, just to show you where they are, I'm gonna jump cut back into Bubblegloop proper just to save us a couple seconds. Might as well. I think I cut out like 10, 15. More just for flow reasons. So the first thing we want to do in Bubblegloop Swamp properly is go over here to the left immediately. This right here is one of our first Jiggy objectives. This alligator statue will open its mouth rhythmically. When it's open, shoot an egg inside.
Yummy, Croctus like that.
This will cause this one to despawn and a new one to spawn elsewhere.
Me want yummy egg too.
Upon doing that for all the Croctuses, we will get a Jiggy. With that said, they start getting placed in more and more out-of-the-way locations, and their biting speed does increase as you actively feed them. So by the time you reach the final Croctus, you gotta kind of lead your shot as it's like closing its mouth almost to get the shot in, but we'll see that later on. With that said, you get the wading boots in this level for a reason. There's a lot of swamp water around here, and you need to wade through it in order to get everything. A lot of nodes, a Jinjo or 2, and some Mumbo Tokens are located in the swamp water properly. Worth noting pretty early into the world itself, though, Bubblegloop Swamp is the first level we're going to be doing in multiple parts, mostly because it's around the point where the level scales start getting large enough, where there's enough things to do in each corner where it takes up enough time to be 2 or more videos. Mind you, the or more really only applies to one specific world. We'll see at the end game. I do try to place my endpoints in a world across multiple parts, usually in a loading transition, but there's times like in Bubblegloop specifically where I just kind of end in the middle of nowhere because the next nearest load transition would have been minutes away. So for the first Jiggy we're actually getting here, there's a Jiggy switch on that one platform. You need to ground pound it and then walk across these platforms. I've gotten this with like more than 20 seconds left on the clock because I've taken some daring jumps with Talon Trot and all that. But for this specific playthrough, I didn't feel like risking falling down over and over and over again and just wasting time recording. So I decided to take it the slow and steady way all the same. Bubblegloop Swamp is the first of a few levels in the game, though, where it's effectively shaped like a plus or an X, where there's the center point in the level where there's a couple of things you can do, but a majority of the objectives are on the arms of the plus or the X. So effectively, if you just stand in the middle of the level and look around and you see something unique, there's probably something to do there specifically, like that gator head in the distance and the fence behind it. There's a Jiggy tied to each of those. There was a turtle on another route. There's going to be something for us to do over there. One route, actually, we just saw there has a bunch of tall trees that we need to shock jump pad up to. That's a Jiggy over there. Though on that note, if there is something I really appreciate about Banjo-Kazooie specifically, it has really good landmarking within its levels. If you just say stand at a specific point in the level and look around, you'll see a lot of landmarks to the first-person camera otherwise that will stand out, and then if you see them in a cutscene where maybe you hit a switch or something and a door opens and the like, you can pretty quickly indicate where that's going to be as long as you looked around even cursorily. To compare to Banjo-Tooie in that regard, Tooie's levels eventually get so big where there's a very good chance if you hit a switch, it'll open a door in a place you've never seen or never been because there's so many subsections to a given level. I think that is one of Banjo-Tooie's larger shortcomings in comparison to this game because every world in this game, with the exception of specifically the last one, is small enough where you can get a good glimpse in from a slightly high area and absorb a majority of where things are landmark-wise. It's very similar to Mario 64, actually, in that regard, alongside Mario Sunshine, where the levels are constrained enough where you can really get an idea of where things are very quickly. Also, that jump cut there is because every time I revisit this game, I constantly try to attack that specific stage of the egg I jump cut on with the mid-air beak attack from Kazooie rather than the beak barrage you need to do by pressing Z and the B button. I don't know why, I just never think to use that first because, again, it's kind of an awkward move to use unless you need to use it to break like a rock or the like. Though, thinking about that, actually, if there's one thing I will give the expanded movesets and the like of Banjo-Tooie, they really make Banjo himself a more capable fighter so you don't just need to rely on the rat-a-tat-rap mid-air beak attack I use with Kazooie the entire time in this game.
An ugly, hairy trespasser. He's after our gold, but he'll never beat us all.
This is the combat challenge for Bubblegloop Swamp. They're gonna throw a bunch of frogs at us. They take 2 or 3 main attacks to take out normally. This is one of the first opportunities I largely try to take advantage of Wonder Wing, just to invincibility through every frog in one shot, because if you can place yourself right, you can just mow them down within like 10 seconds, especially if you have the max amount of golden feathers you can have at this point.
You're too tough for us, Flibbits. Take our gold.
Thank you. The order in which you do Bubblegloop Swamp from here will largely depend on your own tastes. With that said, I do recommend no matter what, you save the Jiggies tied to the transformation from Mumbo that's going to be here for last, as, like I mentioned already earlier, there's something we want to do with the transformation over by the Freeze Easy Peak puzzle. I personally like to go for the turtle next. What you got going on over here, Mr. Turtle?
Oh, my feet are so numb and cold.
Well, we can heat them up for him. You just gotta stand on any of his given feet, and then do the beak bomb down into them. Upon which we're gonna be greeted with one of my favorite sound effects in the game.
Oh, that's a bit better.
Every time I play this game, the first time I hear that, I just start cackling. It's such an abrupt sound design difference from everything else in the game, which is largely very cartoony and farty and all that. But then you just got this genuine sounding, probable Rare employee just going, "Oh!" I love it.
Tank top's warm at last. Perhaps you'd like this.
Upon warming up all 4 of his feet, he spits out a Jiggy, but we're not done with this turtle yet, because his mouth is now an open door for us to enter. As weird as that seems. Before we go in, though, I want to get on top of Tank Top to get those wading boots, because there's a Jinjo behind him in the water, and well, I just want to be safe about things. You do need to get onto Tank Top's shell, and then pretty immediately get into Talon Trot to climb him, though, worth noting, because otherwise you will just slide off. It's one of those slopes that feels like it should be climbable even without Talon Trot, but oh well. You could get this Jinjo just by jumping into the water and jumping back out, because there is a little bit of a cooldown whenever you take damage from hazards like swamp water, where there's like maybe 3 to 5 seconds where you can just kind of jump around and fly around. So if you're quick about it, you'll probably get that Jinjo with only taking 1 damage point if you just decide to ignore the boots, but I didn't want to do that. Time for one of my most loved or hated Jiggies in the game. If only because if I look away for a split second, my entire order is disarrayed. Make sure you grab the notes around the turtle shell first, though, because that extra 6 might be what makes you hitting 90 or not very easy. Quiet, please. The famous Tip Top Choir will now perform my latest work. We got a purple, a light blue, and a purple turtle singing.
Bit short, isn't it, Shellboy?
We'll see. Copy what you just heard for lesson 1. So to get the Jiggy here, we need to listen to whichever turtles sing, and then ground pound the turtles in the order they just sung. So purple, light blue, purple. We need to do that, I think, 3 or 4 times with increasing numbers of steps every single time. Not too bad. Try lesson 2. My personal recommendation to make this a little bit easier on yourself is open like a Microsoft Word or something and type the first letter of the color in the order they sing. When I was recording this footage, I personally used the letters R, B, Y, P, V, and S, and most of those letters are self-explanatory except for V and S. You see, there's 2 blues, so I write the light blue on the bottom left as sky blue, hence the S. And since there's pink and purple that both start with P, I changed the purple to violet instead in my head, so that's the V. Ah, splendid. You just need one more lesson. I believe if you get this puzzle wrong, you just take a damage point and have to start the step you're on over again. But it's been a while since I actively messed this up too badly. I think when I was doing a playthrough of this that I ended up not finishing in like 2018, I got to the second to last step and I was just like, you know what? I don't feel like doing this jiggy anymore because I messed it up like 3 or 4 times in a row. And not for nothing, as we'll see later on, if you want to do a lot of what this game has to offer, you have enough leeway to do something like that. Magnificent. A true masterpiece. Here, take this trinket I found earlier. And that's a jiggy. There is something else in here, though, that I forget to grab until the end of the world. Namely, if you get onto Tip Top's podium and do a flip-flap backflip, you'll get one of this level's 2 honeycomb pieces. Worth noting while we're here, though, while this is Banjo's own first game, both he and Tip Top debuted elsewhere. The 2 of them, alongside Conker from Conker's Bad Fur Day, first debuted in Diddy Kong Racing on the N64. If memory serves dating-wise, both Banjo-Kazooie itself, as well as the game that eventually became Conker's Bad Fur Day, were revealed first, but Diddy Kong Racing was the one that ultimately released Force, and thus is all 3 of those characters' debut. That's always been a little bit of fun history to me, I don't know why. I believe there's people who think that most of the playable characters in Diddy Kong Racing were going to get their own platforms at some point because of that, but I'm not sure if there's actually any notes or comments from developers stating that was actually the case. Future me, if you can do some research on that for the second pass, that'd be fantastic. But if that was the case, hey, that's very ambitious of them. So over in this corner of Bubblegloop, we got these high platforms that have huts on them. Destroying most of the huts will reveal shock jump pads that you can use to get up to higher ones. With that said, most of the final ones up here have the witch switch, which blows the hat off the Grunty statue that was in a room leading to Bubblegloop, as well as ultimately where a jiggy lies at the highest point. With that said, I have slightly styled my playthrough of this run of Bubblegloop in order to get the Croctus up here while I'm up here anyway, just so I don't have to go super out of the way to come back to get this one. By the way, doing that jump and getting the Mumbo token at the same time is weirdly hard for me specifically. I don't know why. Specifically when I was doing the practice run for this level, I failed that jump like 4 times in a row while trying to do both at once, and that was a lot of wasted time. On that note, though, I forget if I've talked about this any kind of recently, but practice playthroughs used to be kind of a weird thing to me, I won't lie, because I didn't really do them. At most, there would be a section per LP I would practice ahead of time because it was one I was always iffy at, like specific Shine Spark chains and certain Metroids and the like. But everyone I knew who was either doing LPs themselves or was listening to would talk about doing them, and I just didn't see the point at the time until specifically, I think Metroid Other M was the LP where I started doing practice runs a lot more regularly. If only because hard drive space-wise, things were getting tight enough at that point where I wanted to make sure my footage was as efficient as possible, so things just kind of changed up around that exact point. Now you may have noticed there are several notes, a Jinjo, and a Mumbo token, I believe, under some of these trees that I'm just ignoring for now. That's because we actively cannot grab them yet. The space that they're in underneath the little grass platforms is too short for Banjo to walk into. There might be some, like, hitbox abuse you can do in some way or another to get in there early, but we need to actively get transformed by Mumbo in order to actively reach where those are. At the top of these platforms, at the highest point in Bubblegloop Swamp, as is the case with pretty much every single world in the game, lies our next jiggy, 6 down, 4 to go in the swamp. And not for nothing, one of the more infamous jiggies in the game is one of them. Off the top of my head, there's maybe 3 jiggies in this game that are infamous for causing a lot of shit, and we're gonna get one of them next time. Also, not for nothing, I did just attempt to do a specific trick right there, but we'll talk more about what that is when it comes a bit more into play, I think, in a world or two. But with that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 6, we're going to finish off Bubblegloop Swamp before moving on towards Freeze Easy Peak. See you guys then.